Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this young lady on. Her name is Kristen Waggoner, President, CEO, General Counsel of Alliance Defending Freedom, or ADF. Kristen, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
You are good. I appreciate that. You've got a lot going on. You are fighting for rights that are inherently given to us by God. The Creator said, here are your rights. And then there's a piece of paper called the Constitution that protects all of those rights and restricts the government. The government forgot to read the Constitution, I think, because in this day and age, you've got to be awfully busy just protecting the basic rights we all thought we had.
Well, we are very busy, but it's a joy to get to do this work because it's so important, not just for our generation, but for future generations. The rights that we advocate for at Alliance Defending Freedom are the rights of sanctity of life, also free speech, religious freedom, parental rights, and marriage and family, which brings us into the gender identity ideology and combating that as well. And all of those rights are the rights that we have are as humans because we are made in the image of God, and it doesn't matter where you live, the United States or around the world, we're global. Those rights are worthy of protection.
It is Kristen Waggoner, the President, CEO, General Counsel of Alliance Defending Freedom, ADF. All those things are normal. We all thought that those were a given. We used to be like in the in-group. Hey, we all believe in this stuff. Now we're the bad guys. How did that shift happen? Is it about indoctrinating people in academia? Is it about big Hollywood, big sports, big music, about big tech, big media? Is it all those things together? They have been pounding on our kids and on the newest generation that believing what the things that you just said that are normal, that we all used to believe in, are somehow bad or non-inclusive.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Yeah.
I would say that it's all of those things, right? It's all the different institutions and areas that we develop culture in. It's in the law, yes, but the job of ensuring that these fundamental freedoms are protected isn't just up to the lawyers, it's up to all of us because these things happen in our homes and how we train our children, in our schools, in what's being taught to our children, and also in our communities at the local school board level, the local election level, and just developing policy. So, and also through cases. And I think more and more we're seeing this concept of cancel culture play a role in silencing those who believe that these rights are important. And I got to say, we just need to step up and have the courage because more people agree with us than what we might realize. And what's important also is that many of the world's countries have constitutions or declarations or treaties that protect these same rights, but they are not worth the paper they're written on because activist judges have taken over in those areas and made them essentially worthless guarantees, and the citizens have said nothing about it.
Right.
So we have a role to play here, and it belongs to all of us, that role.
Yeah, interesting that you bring up other countries because Canada has a very similar constitution, but the first thing basically says the government can shut off all your rights anytime it wants. And then you've got these rights if we feel like letting you have them. The government doesn't give us anything. I think Obama was the maddest about that, where he said the Constitution is not a document of negative rights. Well, no, it's a document that says here's what the government can't do to us. Here's what the government can't take away from us. That bothers them, doesn't it, Kristen? Because the government wants to be able to say, I'm the ruler of you. I am your higher power. I am your educator. I am your provider. And we say, well, no, you're not. You're none of those things. You exist because we allow you to exist. Don't forget to read the Constitution. They'd like to see it go away behind a glass case, wouldn't they?
Well, as you opened, I was listening to how you were parsing through these rights. And one of the things that we teach at ADF is it's God-given constitutional rights, not just constitutional rights.
Yes.
Because they don't come from the government. They come from God. And regardless of whether you agree with me on an issue or disagree, you have that fundamental right to express your belief peacefully. You have the right to raise your family and live consistent with your faith, even if I disagree with that faith.
Right.
And you have the right to enter the marketplace and to put your ideas forward. And you shouldn't have your business license or any of your rights be contingent on whether you agree with the government on these fundamental issues.
Yeah, and I don't have to agree with the government. The only entity that can take my rights away is God because he gave them. So I'm with you 100%. And the government, again, hates that document. They would love to add a little precursor saying, by the way, we can take these rights away anytime we want. And we don't have that here, and we're not going to give that up, hopefully. It's Kristen Waggoner. ADF is her organization. Is it adf.org?
adflegal.org.
adflegal.org. Go there and check out what they do and go support what they do. Let's talk about Title IX. I'm 20, 30 years older than you. But I remember Title IX coming out when I was a kid, and I remember asking my gym teacher, what does Title IX mean? It was in the early 1970s. And she said, it just means that girls have the same opportunities as boys. And I went, I've got sisters, and now that I'm an adult, I've got 5 daughters and a wife and a mother and 3 sisters. I am all for women and girls having the same opportunities I have. 100% I believe in Title IX. Oh, by the way, Joe Biden wants me to believe that Leah Thomas, who's William Thomas, who's a dude, is also protected by Title IX, when I'm going, well, no, he's 6'4", and he swims faster than any woman. He was 460-something against the men, so he's not a very good male swimmer. So he could just say he's a woman and Title IX covers him too. You guys have been fighting this battle, haven't you, to keep gender identity out of that?
We have been fighting the battle for many, many years now, and I'm hopeful that the tide is turning. I think it's important that we recognize we don't have to speculate any longer about the harms of gender identity. We can see them playing out across our institutions and our culture and in all kinds of different ways. We represent athletes who are challenging the loss of equal opportunities in sports, but the Title IX law and the impact of this radical rewrite plays out in the classrooms, in PE, in locker rooms and showers, in opportunities that are had, yes, on the athletic field, but also in the speech and in threatening punishment to students and to teachers who may decide to refuse to participate in secret transition policies that schools had, or may want to say that men are men and women are women. They now face the threat of punishment for saying those things in schools. And you're right to point out your teacher was spot on when she talked about why Title IX was adopted. More than 50 years ago, Congress recognized that women were not being given equal opportunities, and Title IX is the law that was designed to fix that. And even in that law, in the regulations, it recognizes that there are legitimate differences between men and women, and that the law at some point needs to recognize those differences in certain areas. And the Biden administration has essentially gutted those protections for women and girls.
Well, the safe spaces and the privacy of women and girls, or even the sports of women and girls, will cease to exist if we add gender identity. I'm 6'1", 250. I can outlift just about any woman on the planet. I go and work out all the time. How fair would that be if I showed up for a weightlifting competition with women? It would be very, very unfair. But if I say I'm Josephine today, if Title IX changed, I would have to have that opportunity to compete anywhere I want. Wouldn't this necessarily delete women from existence, period, when it comes to equality? Because anybody could be a woman.
Yes, it fundamentally erases the differences between men and women, which also erases the rights that women have to have equal opportunities, to have fair play, and also to have privacy. I mean, I am so tired of being told to sit up and shut down, to essentially shut up and sit down, because we don't want to share a bathroom or a locker room or a shower with a biological man. We have a number of clients right now who are middle school girls and high school girls who have been asked to share locker rooms, and they've simply not they refuse to do so, wearing their uniforms, their athletic uniforms, under their school clothes all day long, so they don't have to change in front of men. We have one client right now in one of our 5 Title IX cases where she's been sexually harassed by this male in the locker room. Vulgar things have been said to her that are threatening to her, and the school has not stood up and done anything about it. So, and I would say, even in that particular instance, 300 girls were displaced from competition over 700 times over just several years because of this male participating in the girls' league.
And it's not okay. It's not a safe place. When I was in high school, I played baseball, and I didn't like showering with the other guys. You know, I'm a private person. I can't imagine the opposite gender being in there. Holy mackerel. That would have changed everything. And again, I mentioned Leah Thomas, this guy William Thomas. I've had Riley Gaines on many times. She's a very good friend, and she's 5'6", if that, and he's 6'4". He didn't change anything about his body, just said he was a different gender, and was just full frontal nude in front of all the women in the swim team. And that, either you accept that or you're the bigot. But you don't have to worry about the rights or privacy of the girls at all. All 15 of them, it was the one guy whose rights mattered. That's crazy to me.
It is crazy. And while we should be compassionate to all people and treat all people with dignity and respect, it is not compassionate to ignore the truth, and it is not compassionate to strip women and girls of their rights. It's time that we stand up. And the science also supports this. I mean, for example, there's no amount of testosterone suppressants that overcome the performance advantage that a male has over an equally trained female athlete.
Right.
There's a 10 to 50% gap. Hearts, lungs, muscles, bones, everything is different. Hips, that you just simply simply can't overcome that advantage. And for the same reason, we know that essentially forcing children to take cross-sex hormones or puberty blockers and permitting that also is creating great harm. So the science is proving that this is destructive in how it is impacting people.
I wonder, as you're a legal mind, I wonder if, and maybe you already have clients like this, you could fill us in if you do, if there's a race or, a weightlifting, as I said, if there's some sport that a biological male shows up to and is in the top 8, and only the top 8 get a scholarship, or the top 4, and only the top 4 get a scholarship. Does number 5 have a case, the female that came in 5th? Does the female that came in 9th have a case in the top 8 category? I would think yes, no?
Yes, I mean, this is when I talk about displacement. You're citing many examples that we have as clients right now in these cases, including Chelsea Mitchell, for example. She was one of the first group that filed in the very first lawsuit challenging the right of women to have fair play. And she was a Connecticut high school track athlete, and she's runs in college now. She was stripped of 4 championships as a result of 2 boys competing as boys and 3 weeks later coming into the girls' league and then beating the girls.
Right.
In addition to the 4 state championships, though, Selena Soul and other clients that we've represented from Connecticut have been displaced from regional championships or state championships as a result of a male placing higher. And even in the NCAA tournament, right? In some instances, it's like the top 16 that can make it. Well, if you're 17, you're out of luck. And the same thing for women's scholarships that are provided under Title IX. It is not right. It is not fair. And we do need to stand up and say that this is wrong. And the Biden administration, which is made up of unelected bureaucrats regulating these issues now in an unconstitutional way, we have to stand up and fight back.
ADFlegal.org. It's Kristen Waggoner, the president and CEO. Let's talk about the fact that for some reason the left thinks it's illegal for people to peaceably assemble, which is protected by the First Amendment, in front of abortion clinics. I'm confused why somebody's in trouble for praying at an abortion clinic, because that's peaceful. I mean, you can be BLM or Antifa and go kick people, shoot people, burn things down. That's cool. You can attack police, no problem. But you want to go to an abortion clinic and say, hey, maybe think about the choice you're making and say a prayer, you're in trouble. When did that happen?
It's concerning that it is happening. We have several cases in the UK right now where that has happened, where those who have been praying outside of abortion clinics have been arrested and interrogated.
I just want to interrupt. I saw that video. This woman was literally not even praying out loud. And didn't they ask her, are you thinking of a prayer? Something like that. It was so nuts. Whatever I saw, maybe this is not your client, but I saw a blonde woman was taken away by police because they asked her what she was praying or what she was saying to herself. And she admitted it was a prayer. Is that the case?
It is our client, and I think that it's important to recognize that we are the last Western country in the world, here in the United States, that is resisting this type of legislation that censors speech and essentially is essentially creating thought crimes, which the UK now has outside of abortion clinics. In addition, we represent Päivi Räsänen in Finland, where she simply tweeted out a Bible verse in opposition to her church officially sponsoring a gay pride parade, and she's been charged with 3 crimes as well. And so it's important here. We see this rise of censorship even here in the United States, in the cases that are being brought to the Supreme Court, in our everyday calls that we get through intake. And we know that this is a rising tide of censorship, and we have to stand up against it.
It is, again, Kristen Waggoner. I appreciate you coming on. We have to talk about maybe getting some of those ladies on my show, because I'd like to expose the United States to exactly what they're going through and what we face if we let the slippery slope continue. Let's get into the abortion pill. I'm not sure I understand the entire upheaval about this. I'm guessing in states that allow abortion, the pill would probably be allowed. In states that don't allow abortion or that restrict it, this is probably not available. What was the basis of the case? I know that recently the Supreme Court said that those states that allow abortion can still have it available. Fill me in. I don't want to get it wrong.
Sure. Well, there are 2 cases that were before the Supreme Court this term that touched on abortion, and ADF was involved in both of those cases. We also had the privilege of serving on the legal team with Mississippi that overturned Roe versus Wade. And in the cases this term, the first one was over the FDA's approval of chemical abortion drugs and its subsequent removal of protections that were put in place for women. Okay. What most women don't know, and most people really don't know, is that abortion drugs are very dangerous. And on the FDA's own label, it says 1 in 25 women will go to the emergency room because they've taken this drug. That is a very high rate of complications that occur, and that's the FDA's own admission.
You know what's crazy? You're the first person that I'd heard that from. So you're right. They're not telling anybody this, are they?
Well, no, and you just simply need to read the drug's label and you'll know. It's on the label itself that when you do the math, it's 1 in 25 women. I'll give you another statistic that's also deeply concerning. The FDA's own studies that they cited say that there is an increased hospitalization of 300%.
Oh my
a
goodness.
300% higher rate of hospitalization when when you remove in-person doctor visits. So when we think about what this abortion pill does, it induces labor. It tells a woman that she should go into her home, or a college student in her dorm room. She should take these drugs without ever seeing a doctor in person and induce labor in the privacy of her dorm room or her home, never knowing how much blood is too much. How do I know what the complications are? And as a result of reducing those in-person visits, studies suggest that 300% more women will have to visit the hospital as a result.
And clearly the side that's pushing abortion, and I think pushing population control, don't want women and girls to know this. Because if they know this, women and girls are smart. They'll say, I better not take this then. That's the problem, right?
Well, and the FDA is actually in what our case was about was the removal of these common sense safety provisions. And in making that case, one of those common sense safety provisions that was repealed was the FDA requiring physicians to report on complications. So you don't even have to report on it anymore.
Wow.
But so the Supreme Court heard this case, and in hearing the case, actually determined to sort of punt the case on a legal technicality to not address the merits of the recklessness of what the FDA did. And we believe that the case will continue with states litigating it in the lower courts and likely make its way back up to the U.S. Supreme Court again.
It is Kristen Waggoner. Go and check out adflegal.org and go support everything she does. I've only got about 20 or 30 seconds, but you said that the Supreme Court punted something. They punted yesterday the Missouri v. Biden case as well, which is the censorship case online. I'm concerned because it's supposed to be 6-3 or at least 5-4 conservative, and yet they keep on kicking cases down the road. Is that what you have to do at your organization and others like you? You have to retool now and say, we got to bring it back to you. We don't like that you punted it, and just keep on applying it until they actually give you a ruling? It's concerning that they're punting anything.
It's disappointing. I will say that it's disappointing, but I've been doing this long enough. We've had 15 Supreme Court victories in the last 13
Nice
years
job.
at the Supreme Court. And we know that there are reasons that we don't always know as to why the court rules in the way that it does. I'm not going to speculate about what those reasons are.
Yeah.
I will tell you that in the second abortion case this term, the EMTALA case, which had to do with the Biden administration reinterpreting a federal law to try to say that states couldn't limit abortions consistent with their law and couldn't support women and children in that way. The court again punted on the issue, but it punted because the lawsuit forced the federal government to change its position along the way.
Gotcha.
And essentially to say that Idaho's law, which this lawsuit's been led by the Idaho Attorney General, will remain in place. And so that case will continue to be litigated as well. And just one more thing, Joe, because I think it's important to say, while it punted on the Murphy case, which you referenced earlier, which had to do with censorship and government pressure, it ruled in the NRA case this term and specifically said that the government doesn't have the right to censor speech either directly or indirectly.
Right.
And in that case, government officials were trying to force banks and insurance companies to deplatform the NRA. So that was a very great and notable victory, and one that I think will serve Americans in the future.
I'm glad you brought it up. It's Kristen Waggoner, President, CEO, General Counsel at Alliance Defending Freedom. ADFlegal.org is the website. Come back again soon. I love the work that you're doing, and I'd love to get some of those clients on as well. I think that people would learn a lot from them, okay?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. We're back after this. Stay right here.